This is an interim of the core working group. Chairs, it's me, Marco, and Jaime. It's an official IETF meeting, so not well applies. IPR and not only please be nice with each other. So we had 2 items in the agenda for today. The first one was revisiting latest actions on the resource directory document. I understood we don't have actual updates since last time to check today. Correct, Christian?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get around to the last 2 weeks to progress on this. So I do have a lot of action items, but unfortunately no progress for today.
No worries, and we can take it at the next interim just as well. But then we have all more time for the downlink document. And Alan also here today mentioned his pull request yesterday, so adding more material for the discussion. And I think Bill is actually going to drive the presentation.
Yeah, thanks. So I have to confess that we didn't actually progress very much as well, but since there was an interim available and Jaime asked me to come and present something, I said just okay, let's just do that. So thanks to Alan also for giving this for his pull requests lately. I'll share my screen and then let's see if this works again as I initially thought. Okay, let's see. Is this working? I suppose it should be.
Try to go full screen.
Is that good?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So not very many updates since IETF 108, but I'll just give you a summary of the next steps. So we are right now in draft 11. Draft 11 was the last one that was submitted just before the 108 meeting, and what we had was a roadmap in which we gradually moved towards some of the editorial changes that change the language in which we start talking about state transfers when you actually have the conditional observe attributes applied on resources. And then while we're doing that, we'll also take the time to discuss and put in the future drafts that will address some of the issues that we discovered with PMAX, particularly when you have the CoAP server and the CoAP client separated by a proxy that might or might not behave the way you want it to. And then proposals from Alan and the Live M2M people for EP-min and EP-max. So I'll just have a couple of slides more, Alan, and then please go ahead and discuss that. So the idea was to convene small research groups or small discussion groups before IETF 109. We generally have been using Jitsi and taking notes over HackMD. So please let us know if you would like to receive an invitation to join. So I actually extended this invitation at the core meeting in 108, but then I didn't really get anybody else who wanted to join in. So I guess we are still the same group, which is actually kind of nice because we have rather effective discussions and also very informed opinions. But if you want to join in, any of you who are here right now, please let me know, or just mail the authors of downlink, and you'll be included into the mails. Okay, so the ongoing discussions in draft 11 basically just discusses, like I said, notifications arising from setting these observe attributes and just reporting them and thinking of message transfers. So the language is not very RESTful, and rather it sounds as if we are kind of proposing a completely new protocol. So there are substantial editorial changes that need to be performed in order to alter this language, and the idea is to align it towards using language that who was it? Okay, so that was more towards how it's done in, for example, the observe RFC. That we talk about RESTful state transitions and transfers. And then this is probably the last slide that I had. So this is again literally this came from this slide is actually taken also from IETF 108, but there's a proposal basically from OMA to support two new attributes, EP-min and EP-max. We had a small discussion in 108. It wasn't a very long discussion because we didn't have that much time. But Alan has actually augmented that proposal today with an example use case, which I hadn't had time to go through. Alan, I'm sorry, but we'll do it now. So EP-min and EP-max basically they differ from P-min and P-max in a very significant manner. And then the entire discussion is basically found in this GitHub as an issue number 18. So that's basically tracking the opinions of everybody. And I don't know if I can actually do this, but let me try to see if I can. Oops, what did I do now? Oops.
We are seeing your desktop, but if you want to show the issue, I guess, feel free to share the whole screen.
No, actually what had happened was that my laptop went into, the screen got locked. So just a minute. Here you go. So this is this was what I wanted to show you. Can you still see my screen? And
yes, we see the browser. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the current issue here, and we have had some discussions. As you can see, it's already started. Alan proposed this on the 13th of April, but I think the discussion was even earlier than that because the original information came on the core mailing list. And then we proposed that Alan basically raised an issue in the GitHub. So this was even earlier than that. And then there have been already some opinions on that from others. So the latest status update here is this. This is the text to consider. And Alan had just given this like 18 hours ago. Alan, I think it's time that basically I could stop sharing my screen, or what do you think?
We could use your screen, or you could make me presenter. Either way.
Yeah. Well, let me stop sharing my screen. So in case you need to present other things, then you can use your screen as well.
Okay.
Just a second. Yeah. Okay. It's yours now.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Okay, so as Bill said, I put the issue in, and after we got through this, and we did have some very good discussions because it needs to be clear to the reader of the document what these new attributes are and how to use them. So the first thing I did is I actually created a pull request to put the actual changes to the draft in that I thought were applicable. And then I just wrote this example text because I wasn't sure how we wanted to get this example text in the specification. Because when we were discussing this I think at 108, there were example formats, and because of other confusions on the use of PMax. So I wasn't sure how we wanted to create the content. So I just put it here in the issue rather than adding it in the pull request. So let me walk you through some of the logic here, and I want to first show you. By the way, anybody interrupt me at any time, or if you think I'm going the wrong direction and you want to pull me a certain direction, please go ahead and just jump right in. So in the lightweight M2M spec, and this is the latest, well, almost the release version of the spec that's coming out quite soon. We have, your conditional notification attributes in the DIN link are translated to notification class attributes in the lightweight M2M spec. And so what you'll see is we've got pmin, pmax, greater than, less than, step. We also created some that we felt were important for lightweight M2M. And so we created these EP min, EP max, edge, con, and HQ max. So I just wanted to go over these 5 new attributes very quickly and then talk about how I've proposed to modify didlink so far. And I don't know, I've heard some people call it didlink and other people pronounce it dynlink. I like dynlink, but I'll pronounce it any way you guys want. Okay, so the EP min is supposed to control when the device does a measurement. So it doesn't impact the notification itself, but the device's, its control of the device in generating the notification, and EP max as well. The edge is a new attribute that actually controls the evaluation of the attribute to determine whether it changed. Did it change on the leading edge or the falling edge? The rising edge or the falling edge, the leading edge, however you want to call that in terms of the traditional electronic representations. We also added a new control parameter called confirmable notification, and that is because even though we have a default that when you're generating a notification that we'll send it confirmable or non-confirmable based upon the default, there could be, your default could be non-confirmable because your assumption is most notifications are just informative. But if there's an important notification, you'd want to designate on this observation, this notification must be sent confirmable because it's critical. So, you know, an alarm of some sort versus just an informative notification. And then we also have a historical queue depth. So if you are maintaining historical notifications because you are currently unable to reach the client with the notifications, then the server is at least being directed to say, save 5 of these things. So when we come back up, at least I have a history of 5. Those are things we felt were important in the lightweight M specification. So when I relate that back to the dynlink specification, the only ones I started to put in were about EP min and EP max, but I think these other concepts are also important that we need to consider for dynlink, because I think other users of the co-op specification may want to take advantage of these concepts. All right, so that was my first like level set of the evolution of how this happened. So are there any questions so far? And by the way, I do have the chat window up, so if anybody wants to type something in the chat window, I can look at that as well. All right, so I'll continue then. So
can you quickly cover how you get at this historical queue?
How, I'm sorry, Karsten, go ahead. Say again.
How do you get at this historical queue? You didn't scroll enough up enough for me to read the text.
Okay. So I don't know if you can see everything, but here are the notes on this.
Okay, you essentially send a piece of CNML that has all these values.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that's interesting because we just added this capability a few months ago. None of, you know, this HQ Max has not yet been, I would say it hasn't been implemented in many distributions, nor has it been widely utilized in the field. So I do suspect we'll, you know, hopefully we understood what the market needed, and that this will, I don't know, evolve is the right word, but there you may see some changes based upon deployments. All right, let's go back to, okay, so to the issue, the issue was just about EP min and EP max, and that was, as we said, based upon email threads. It was better to capture that in an issue so we could, you know, use GitHub to its availability or, you know, greater capabilities. Eventually we said, okay, after all of our email and meeting discussions, just put in a pull request. And I did that. So let me just go, I'm trying to think maybe the next step. Let me do the example here, because I think that I'm making it bigger just in case you guys need it. This explains the logic of these two new parameters, and then I'll show you how I try to accommodate them in the DynLink draft, because they're not notification parameters. They're really control parameters about generating the notification or about doing the measurements in order to generate the notification. So I had to separate out conditional notification attributes from conditional control attributes, which is what I'm calling these things that are really controlling how the notifications are generated, or the measurement, when the measurements occur. Okay, so as my example, I'm going to say these are conditional control attributes, and we're going to do an observation where you're going to use pmin, pmax, and greater than, and then these two new ones, the minimum evaluation and the maximum evaluation. Okay, periods. So in this use case, I have a temperature sensor, and I'm going to send a notification whenever it goes above or below 100 degrees. So I set GT greater than 100. You know, I don't want it to report more than every 5 seconds. So I'm going to set my pmin to 5 seconds. And I want it to report at least every 60 seconds. So I'm going to set pmax equal to 60. So that is just standard example using GT, pmin, and pmax. I don't think there's any ambiguity there. So now, in reality, what this could mean is I have my device and I generate a report on the temperature sensor because it went above 100. Now, I can go to sleep as my device for 5 seconds because I know I can't report until pmin expires after 5 seconds. And I could just, honestly, as my device, I could go to sleep for 60 seconds because that's pmax, wake up at pmax and send my report. So if I wanted to, based upon these parameters, I could just go to sleep, wake up once every 60 seconds and send my temperature. But I don't think that's the behavior that is wanted by the client based upon these parameters. But there's nothing that guides the device in what it should do besides just, you know, waking up at pmax and sending the report. So in order to control how frequently the server measures the temperature sensor, the client can configure 2 more parameters, and they're called EP-min and EP-max. So this is the minimum evaluation period and the maximum evaluation period. And so in order to control how frequently the server measures the temperature sensor, the client's going to configure it such that it doesn't do it more frequently than 5 seconds. I don't want to waste battery life every, waking up every second. I want to wait a minimum period of 5 seconds. And so that's EP-min, but I must measure it at least every 10 seconds. And that's going to be EP-max.
Alan, why did it set P max to 60 if it really wants to hear from the server from the sensor every 10 seconds?
Because just because you measure it every 10 seconds doesn't mean you report it. You still have to abide by the reporting criteria. So if my temperature, I'm measuring every 10 seconds in worst case, right? If that temperature hasn't changed, I'm not going to report it. But after 60 seconds, if it hasn't changed, I want to report it anyway. And that was
okay. So 60 seconds is actually the refresh time and not the edge condition time that you must do. Sounds like Pmax is actually misnamed, is what it sounds to me.
I'm using Pmax as it's currently defined. So
right.
The way that, just the way the DynLink draft is written right now is I can't report earlier than Pmin, and I must report regardless of whether a change has occurred at Pmax. And so I'm still using it in that context. So, I have a temperature sensor and I reported because it went to 101 degrees. It drops down to 100. Well, it goes up to 102 degrees. I'm not reporting anything because it hasn't, my greater than hasn't been violated. It's still above 100, even though it's changed. So after my Pmax is 60 seconds, I'm going to report 102 degrees. So even though my evaluation criteria has not changed, I'm still going to report, and that's what Pmax is for. I'm hoping that we just communicated well and I answered your question.
I think so. I'm just saying is that it seems like you're introducing a similar sounding attribute. Similar, like the name is similar, but actually the original attribute was perhaps poorly named, and for the purpose of what you were doing, and that's why the need for this other thing is not so obvious, because it's not a maximum. It's a Pmax is not a maximum. It's a you must report every this time anyway, and yeah, so I can see why it was named that way. It just seems like maybe some renaming here would be helpful, but anyway.
Yeah, and I'm all open for any changes because the concepts I think help deployments. Because right now I actually do know of a device that said I just wake up on every Pmax and send the value because that's my minimum energy usage. And
if the tree didn't fall in the forest, why should you pay attention? Right?
Well,
I mean, that's essentially what you're saying, is that
yeah,
that only pay attention to noise in the forest every Pmax. That's what you told me to. Why would I do anything else?
correct. And that kills me because honestly, I don't want to wait 60 seconds to get my fire alarm. Just because you allow me to do that doesn't make it right. So that's why I'm introducing these new parameters, that if you don't want to allow me to go to sleep every Pmax, this is your ability to tell me not to do that. All right, so let's go through the timeline because I actually like the way I wrote the timeline. And because I'm hoping this makes sense to people. So I'm going to start. I just generated a notification, right? My temperature went above 100 degrees. I just generated a notification. So I'm considering that T0. Now, of course, because of PMIN, I have to wait 5 seconds before I do anything else because I can't generate a report. So I'm going to go to sleep for 5 seconds and I'm going to wake up at the end of PMIN. So after, PMIN expires, which is T equals 5 now, I'm going to do a measurement. And pretty much I think that's the way everybody would do it, because at the end of PMIN, if you went below 100, or let's say you were below 100 and went above 100, you'd want to generate a notification as soon as you can. So at PMIN expiry T equal 5, I'm going to do a measurement. If the temperature, met the GT criteria, so if it was above 100, went below, or if it went below and went above, of course, I'd generate a notification. But let's say that we haven't made any change from our previous state. Of course, I'm not going to generate a notification. So at PMIN expiry, I wake up, do the measurement, nothing happened, go back to sleep. So from my new parameter, which is EPMIN, I know I can't do another evaluation for 5 more seconds. So I must wait another 5 seconds before doing another measurement. And now I'm at T equal 10. So at T equal 10, I say, you know what? I'm still in power saving mode. I don't want to do a measurement. So I'm going to go to sleep until EP max expires to where I have to do a measurement. So EP min says, you can do a measurement at the end of this. EP max says, I must do a measurement at the end of this. So now it's T equal 15, right? So 15 seconds went by. I'm now at T equal 15 because of EP max. I must do a measurement now. Okay, well, the temperature has changed. That's my use case. So I'm going to generate a notification. If the temperature hasn't changed, if the GT hasn't met the criteria, I'm going to go back to sleep, at least for another 5 seconds, right? Or I could just go back to sleep for another 10 seconds because of EP max. But the device, it's up to the device to decide its cadence in terms of the wake up based upon EP min and EP max. Let's say 60 seconds goes by and I was waking up every 10 seconds, but the temperature never changed. Doesn't matter. At T equals 60, I have to generate a notification. So that's my example in the way these new attributes are meant to be used. And I think it's important that the logic is understood before we shift over to the pull request. Does that make sense? I don't hear any questions, so either my audio is bad or I'm an amazing spectator.
Do you, Alan, have any kind of guidance for what happens if EP-min and EP-max are not actually set from the client to the server?
Then it's the same situation we had right now, which is it's the device.
So in other words, if there's no EP-min, EP-max, I wouldn't call it the default implementation, but say that the logical course of action is to use p-min as the sleep interval. So that's the way you're saying, right?
Not necessarily, because there's nothing that says that. It doesn't say that so when the way it's written right now, forget my new proposal. The way it's written right now is, I must not report for 5 seconds, and I must report at P max, but it doesn't tell me about anything in between. So what should the device's sleep interval be? It doesn't say. There's no guidance. So if we wanted to, we could say that if EP-min and EP-max are not defined, that P-min may be used to guide the device on the reporting evaluation period. We could say that. I have no problem with that, but I don't think we can enforce that, because then we'd break all the implementations that currently use P-min.
Yeah. So I mean, in the current draft, I mean, there's some code already there that describes what to do.
Yeah, let's go to the pull requests. Because then what I can do is I can edit this online on the pull request. If there are, Bill, if you want me to capture some changes in the pull request, we can do that. So let me go ahead and go to the pull request and show you, what I'm proposing as the changes. Get this chat. All right, I can't keep the chat window over, or else I wasn't able to see. So let me go to the rich text. The first concept I said, as I pointed out, I said they're not notification attributes, now they're control attributes. And I did want to distinguish between the two, because when we were having our email discussions and our verbal discussion at 108, it was, but these EP-min and EP-max have nothing to do about generating the notification. And that's correct. That statement was 100% correct. They're about control of the device when evaluating whether the notification should occur. So I call them control attributes. And I tried to be consistent in making sure that both conditional notification and conditional control attributes are covered. So then conditional notification attributes define the conditions that trigger a notification that's existing, but conditional control attributes define the cadence of measurement of the conditions that trigger a notification. And I'll just keep going unless I hear somebody interrupt me. So the set of notification attributes defined here, this is the pre-existing text. It allows the client to control how often a client is interested in receiving notifications and how much a resource value could change to make it interesting. I added the text, the set of control attributes defined here allow a client to control how often the server performs a measurement of the conditions. And so that's explicitly the EP-max and EP-min and EP-max, which controls that cadence. I added them into the table. And so this is just a list of the attributes, and I changed the name to control notification and conditional notification and control attributes for consistency. And I'm trying to distinguish between existing text and new text. I know you guys can look at this and know that for yourself, but just to review, control notifications should be evaluated, but conditional control attributes are used to configure the internals. And I use the same language in here. I like the way I did this. Sorry, patting myself on the back. So conditional notification attributes should be evaluated on all potential notifications from a resource. And whether that's the internal server-driven sampling process, or if it's an external update request from the server. But here's what's interesting. The conditional control attributes are used to configure that internal server-driven sampling process. So that's why I call them control attributes, because that's all they're doing. And that's, of course, for performing the measurement. Bill, did you want me to go over the Pmin stuff while I'm here?
Not necessarily. I was just wondering whether Pmax fits into the conditional control attributes or not. And in that case, if Pmax is one of those, then we might have to change the wording for would you, I'm not sure whether you scrolled up or down, but it was near the table, I think. Yeah, so this sorry, Alan, if you go down. Yeah, so there's the last line there that says conditional control attributes are used to configure the internal server-driven sampling. I'm wondering whether that language is accurate if we bring Pmax as a conditional control attribute also. So.
I see what you're saying now, because yeah, it doesn't tell you about the node and Pmin as well. Actually, Pmin is really a control attribute. Mm-hmm. Because all that's doing is restricting or mandating when you send a report, not doing the evaluation report.
Yeah, so it's mostly about reporting and configuring. So
yeah, I like that. If we could, yeah, I agree with that. I hadn't thought about it. Yeah. Let me keep going through the new text, and then we can maybe try and come up with a way I could modify the draft to reflect all that. I'm not sure there's really much change there, because I didn't have to. Well, we'll go through the full thing in a few minutes. Let me do this. All right. So now the minimum evaluation period, and I tried to craft this very much like the format that we did Pmin. So when present indicates minimum time in seconds, the server must wait between two consecutive measurements of the condition of a resource. When it expires, the server may immediately perform a new measurement. It's saying you must wait this time, but you don't have to do it at the end of this time. And then I tried to capture this in the absence of parameter and thus not used by the server. That's where we would, I guess, inject a, if EPmin is not defined, Pmin can be used. Pmin may be used as the default wait period. We want to reflect that. And then just saying it's got to be greater than 0 or it's a bad request. And then similarly, in Pmax, EPmax, excuse me, it's the server time in seconds may wait between two consecutive measurements, right? Because and I struggled when I originally wrote this. I kind of struggled with the wording, because you must wait for EPmin. You could do a measurement, but you must do a measurement after EPmax. So the server may wait between two consecutive measurements. You can wait up to this value. When the maximum period expires, you must perform a measurement. And then in the absence of this parameter, it's not defined used by the server, and then it must be greater than 0, it's a bad request. Then this was the conditional between the two. If they're both defined, EPmax must be greater than EPmin, otherwise you send a bad request. You return a bad request. And then there was just a spelling error found there. That was it. So those are my proposed changes. I didn't include the example text. I think example text may be valuable, but I didn't know if we wanted to include it just for the use of EP min, EP max, or we wanted to include other example text. So I didn't include any example text, but I did want to write that to show and put it in the issue so we can cut and paste it over here if we want. All right. So that's my pull request. Where do we want to go from here?
So from my perspective, I think most of this text is okay. I still have to go through this a little bit more carefully, but this looks sensible to me. I think that where was it that I saw? I saw something that yeah, there was something that you mentioned regarding if EP min is not set, then the server, what was the language there? I need to check once more. But I think that there should be something written in the implementation considerations about what to do in the absence of this parameter indeed. So if P-min is set and EP-min is not set, then we could actually reflect some text in the implementation considerations that the server can use P-min if necessary.
So do you want, I mean, I can edit the pull requests. Do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, that would be good, at least, if you can do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Number 160. So that is here. In the absence of this parameter, the minimum value of this is not used by the server. The server may use pmin if defined as a guidance on the, and I'm just free forming text here, desired measurement cadence, something like that.
Yeah, just put it that way there. And could you just scroll down to see if there is anything in the implementations consideration section, because if we move down.
There, implementation consideration.
Yes. So in the second paragraph, when we talked about the oh, hang on. Yeah, so there was a discussion there about the internal sample period for determining the resource value. So that needs to be considered as well. So, but that refers to also the notification ban.
Yeah, I'm not sure what needs to change here. Server internal sample period.
Yeah, that's probably the internal sample period is probably not very accurate, considering now if we're introducing EP min and EP max there. So I would say that we should probably rephrase that. Instead of saying internal sample period, we could actually mention internal sample period and the EP min, EP max values. So
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. Or how's this? Okay.
This is okay, I think.
Theoretically, this could occur in line with the server internal sample period or the configuration of EP min and EPX max for determining the resource value. Does that read well to you guys?
Yes, it reads well.
That's okay. We just have to ensure that band, band is actually a modifier for the behavior of greater than and less than. So that's as long as that doesn't clash too much with the EP and EP max values here. Yeah, I think this is good.
It doesn't. It's actually quite independent because, yeah, it's quite independent because it's interesting. The PMin, EPmin, PMax, and EPmax have nothing to do with the notification itself. It's just when the device does the measurement, does the test, and that's true of greater than, less than, step, band.
Right.
So that was my proposal for EPmin and EPmax. When I look back at these other ones, let me make this bigger. Somebody put something in the chat. Oh, okay. Sorry, Christian. Let me get back to you. Let me just do this real quick. I was considering putting in pull requests for edge, confirmable, and maximum historical Q, because I really like the alignment between Dynlink and lightweight M2M, but I didn't want to do that all at one shot. So I figure if we can get an agreement on EPmin, EPmax, and we're comfortable with that, then I would put in a separate pull request for each of these other ones. That way we could do them on an individual basis. Is that good for you guys?
That's reasonable. Yes.
All right. So Christian, I'm sorry. Let me go back. I'm assuming you want me to go back to the pull requests. Christian, I saw something in the chat window. Yeah. Christian, are you there?
Hi, Christian. Are you having audio trouble? We can't hear you.
So sorry. Hello?
Now we hear you.
Okay, sorry. So first of all, I'm rather happy with those attributes that are more related to the sampling and not to the resource, to the propagation of the resource state being separate. One particular change that caught my eye is the line about how those are transferred in the query parameter. So as I understand, in lightweight M2M, they are always transported via a completely different channel anyway. And in the diff line 91, it says that both notification and control attributes can be in query parameters. And this would be the very point where I think it would make sense to say this applies to all and this applies only to the notification parameters, because the control attributes, when they are put in the observe request, they wind up as part of a save request. So they shouldn't really change anything inside the server and the sampling interval that the server does, which would probably apply to all the observations there, or all to the whole sensor. Those should not be changeable by a save request, especially in which the observe request is. So would it make sense for you to limit this to the notification attributes, and then control attributes can be used wherever there is an actual unsafe an operation that may have side effects involved?
Okay, so I originally tried to separate them here, and I couldn't figure out the right way to do it. And because I couldn't figure out what to say about control attributes here. Because in reality, in an observe request, you can include any control or notification attributes. They can be there. But
the thing is, as long as those attributes are set, for example, at a binding, inside a binding table or inside the lightweight M2M properties of that object, that's an operation that affects the whole device, and it's okay because that's visible to the user and visible to the protocol. As long as they are only applied to notification, and please correct me when I'm wrong, but I think that the way you're using them in lightweight M2M doesn't even use those query parameters in an observation. When they're used there, they would affect all the other observations that could be on the same resource, In a GET request.
But they wouldn't. So, okay. So the where these values are applied when, because the only place that these attributes are included in an observe is the query parameters. They're not anywhere else, right? And so if you have an existing observation on an attribute and you set in a new observation on that attribute, is that a separate observation or the same observation?
That is a separate observation.
Correct. And so those parameters, they're only applied to that observation, right? So whether it's a control attribute or a notification attribute, it only applies to the observation in which they're attached.
But at least one of the attributes does not make sense in that way. I mean, but this history attribute, that's something that affects the whole resource because it's for, I mean, it's not in there yet, but it's in the other table that's supposed to migrate over here. If that history attribute affects how a later observation would see the initial state, wouldn't
it? You're talking control attributes?
Yeah.
So let's say I have two attributes. You know, I have an observation on my temperature sensor, and I have Pmin equals 5, Pmax equals 10. Forget Epmin and Epmax, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have another observation that I set on that same resource, and I set another observation that says Pmin is 10, Pmax is 20. Did those control attributes affect either of the other observations?
So Pmin, I thought Pmin and Pmax. Okay, they're no, they don't. No, they don't. I was thinking more of the control attributes that were there before we just talked about Pmin and Pmax going over to control attributes. So,
so you're just talking about Epmin and Epmax?
Epmin, Epmax, and history.
Okay, I've actually been doing something in the meantime as well. Sorry about that. So I'm trying to separate out here the conditional notification and conditional control. In my mind, they're completely separate in terms of the scope is solely within the specific observation we're talking about. And maybe we're talking past each other. I don't really understand your question. Whether they're control or notification, I set up an observation and that's an atomic thing. And what the device must do is the device must take all the notifications and all the Epmin and Epmax values of all notifications to decide its wake up cadence. Because the device has to wake up to at least perform one measurement. But that doesn't affect the other cadences of the other measurements. It still has to abide by the Epmin and Epmax of its individual observation. So a more complex example is I have another temperature sensor and I want to wake up every 1 second. So I don't set Epmin, I set Epmax at every 1 second. So the Pmin and Pmaxes are the same at 5 and 60. On the time equals 0, I generate notifications for both. Time equal 5 is my Pmin expiry, so I know I can't generate a report. But now I'm going to wake up every second to evaluate the second temperature sensor. But that doesn't change what's happening on the first temperature sensor. Even though I'm waking up for temperature 2, measuring it every second, I can't measure temperature 1 for 5 seconds. So when 5 seconds expires on temperature 1, I'm already waking up for temperature 2 on my 1 second cadence. So I'm going to measure both.
Okay, so if two observers are observing the same temperature, would the device then? I mean, what will, if this is actually about when the sensor is being evaluated? What if they conflict there? If one request says that you may sets for two requests, two observations, both on the same attribute. One says EP between 1 and 2, and the other says EP between 10 and 20. would that device now measure every 1 to 2 seconds and only take every 10th or so value into consideration for the other one, or would it measure more regularly and report anyway because someone else asked the device to measure more often?
It can't violate the parameters. So temp 1, it cannot, or well, I shouldn't say that. Observation 1.
Okay.
That is, it cannot violate what's in observation 1, regardless of what's in observation 2. Just because the observation, and we're talking about the cadence of the measurement, not the reporting criteria, correct? So as long as you're not violating the measurement parameters of the observation, you're solely basing it on the reporting criteria. So observation 1 says I can't measure more frequently than every 5 seconds. Well, if measurement 2 says you can measure every second, or I'm sorry, observation 2 says you can measure every second, I would say it's implementation, whether you want to evaluate the reporting criteria of the same as an observation on the same resource. There's nothing here that says you can't. Do we want to specify that? I mean, you found a good use case, which is same resource. I have a single temperature sensor. One client, and we're in a multi-client environment. One client says measure it every 1 second. The other client says measure it every 10 seconds. So can I report on observation 1 at the same time I report on observation 2? Because I was awake doing the measurement anyway. We don't have specified behavior for that. At this point, I would say that's implementation dependent. Did that make sense, Christian? I agree with your use case.
It does make sense. I'm basically still trying to, so where I'm coming from is more the topic of how does this work through intermediaries that may understand the protocol. I do see your point that all these evaluation periods can be treated independently and are not interpreted as this is when you must take a measurement, but this is when you must take a measurement for consideration here. So I may take some time to process all the implications of all of this. If everything here is safe, then probably then this may all work. Yeah.
Well, I think it's safe, but do we want to provide guidance? I think that because to me, you know what, I'm gonna do what makes sense in my device as an implementer. If I'm waking up every second because of some other observation, I'm already awake. I'm gonna check the other one anyway. Do we want to provide guidance to say that, you know, these values are recommendations from the client to enable the server to maximize its power savings or maximize its wake up cadence? I don't know how we want to cover that, but I think it's important to give guidance where we can. So I don't know. I struggle with that one. All right. I did just to tell you guys what I was doing, because Bill, I think you said that minimum period and PMIN and PMAX are actually control attributes. So I thought maybe did we want to separate out, and so I left Christian, I left this statement alone, and then I said, okay, here's the control table of notification attributes. And then I had that same statement for the control attributes, and here's the table for the control attributes, and I put PMIN, PMAX, EPMIN, EPMAX. Does that work for you guys? I mean, to separate into two separate tables?
So for me, it's not really changing anything. It's more like, yeah, it's just
Yeah, it's just, you know, I don't know, a recognition that there are differences.
I think Carsten had something to say in the chat channel as well.
Oh, sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, so I was trying to think of having two clients, and one sets EP min and EP max both to 7 seconds, and the other one sends it to 13 seconds. So do I really have to ignore the evaluations I do for client 2 because they happen at the wrong time for the evaluations I'm supposed to make for client 1? Or, I mean, how powerful are these minimum and maximum values?
It's a good question, because if the device is doing its own wake up cadence because of, like you said, you have the client 1 saying wake up every 7 seconds, the client 2 is saying wake up every 13 seconds. Is client 1 is the server invalidated from providing a notification at 7 seconds to client 2? And I don't think so. I think it's the device, because the device has the true state of things, call it the true state, that I woke up and I know there's something. I think the client should be able to evaluate the notification conditions, right, or the notification attributes to say, I'm up anyway, so why shouldn't I be able to generate a report, generate a notification? I guess that's the guidance I'm thinking maybe we should capture. That, if independently of these EP min and EP max attributes, the device detects or is able to do a measurement because of its internal processing, that the device should evaluate the notification criteria and decide whether it should do a notification. So yeah, Karsten, I agree with you. Why would you waste the opportunity if you're already awake?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the language we need to allow that.
Agreed. So maybe implementation criteria. Should we put that in implementation criteria? Let's just capture that.
From considering Carsten's example, do we really need to phrase this as a minimum and as a maximum? Because if we phrase this more in terms of maximum, if we phrase this one-sided, then the problem with the concrete example will go away. And really, what does it mean to have a minimum period between samples? I mean, this is assuming that the device is actively polling, but it could just as well receive the values from some external interrupt or from another observation, for all that matters.
Right, and that's exactly correct. So the way that this originated for me is, I know I have deep sleep and I have PSM, right, power saving mode, and I didn't know what timer I should set to wake out of this mode. So I had no guidance on a timer to wake out of this mode. All I knew is I had to wake up at Pmax. So no matter what, I could always just set my deep sleep timer to be 60 seconds. I'd wake up, boom, send out my report. That's not a good implementation, right? So I wanted some guidance of when I should wake up. But if I have 5 observations, all on different cadences with different EP mins and EP maxes and different P mins and P maxes, I have to create a scheduler, and which is what I did. I created a scheduler taking all of these timers into effect and all of these cadences into effect, and my own internal cadences. I know I need to wake up every 30, more like 100 milliseconds to beep a light, right? Whatever my internal cadence is, I had to create a scheduler, and then based upon the cadence within the scheduler for all of these accommodations, that's how I set my timer. And that's really what the device is doing, because it's not a single observation or set of EP min or P max or P in or P min or P max for a single observation that guides the device. It's all of them. Do we want to capture that? And just say that whenever the device wakes up, it can perform the observation based upon the notification attributes.
How does EP-min play into your scheduler?
Whenever EP-min is on, I use EP-min as one of the elements of an optional wake up. So when I'm doing my scheduler, I show all the mandatory wake ups in, so I create a list of the mandatory wake ups and I put in the optional wake ups and I look at what's my first mandatory. So that's my maximum wait time. What are the ones before that? And do I want to wake up at that time? Have I waited long enough to get power savings? And if I have, and it makes sense to my device because of other things I might want to do, then I wake up on the optional and set my timer based on the optional. If none of that works, I set my timer to wake up on the first mandatory. And I do that every time I go to sleep, because I'm basically, it's a dynamic, how much time should I go to sleep now? And remember, there's no alignment of observations because it's only based upon a T0 of that observation. So it's not T0 of observation 1 is not T0 of observation 2, or my internal T0 of my internal event. So it's quite complex.
Let me phrase it differently. If all EP-min were always 0, would this significantly worsen the implementation?
It doesn't worsen my implementation. It worsens my ability. It worsens the ability of a client to receive a notification. So a client says, I have this temperature sensor. Basically, I want the report, at least I want the possibility of a report at least every 5 seconds. If I don't do that, there's no way for the client to do that. There's no way for the client to represent that. The only thing the client can represent right now is, don't tell me before 5 seconds. You must tell me at least every 60 seconds. The client has no control other than that.
I'm not doubting the usefulness of EP-max, just of EP-min. So if it says, if the client wants to have the possibility of a notification every 5 seconds, it can set EP-max as 5. But
Correct.
What does it get from setting the EP-min?
It's giving, I guess the utility there is not really for the client as much as the server. It's giving the server some slop in order to, provide a better scheduler. It's not for the client as much as the server. Because it gives that, if EP-min is 5 and EP-max is 10, it's telling the server, hey, just this is your area. You can do a little scheduling freedom. You have 5 seconds to play around. Yeah, I mean, that's more for me as a server than it is for the client. I'm trying to answer all the questions. I don't have all the answers. I'm wondering what, Karsten, I'm here, I'm in edit mode at the implementation considerations. Should we capture something here? I mean, I could try and create some text on the fly. Shall we do that?
Well, the implementation considerations have to be inside the set of things permitted by the semantics. So I think the first thing we have to do is define those semantics in such a way that the implementation approaches we would like to enable are actually possible.
Okay, I understood all the words. I don't understand what that means in terms of trying to type the text. Should I be describing the example and then say that or should I just say interdependency of control attributes of an observation are implementation specific, or are you know, enable the, just trying to figure out, do we say that the I don't know, I'm struggling, I'm
I
floundering.
think you want to describe the implementation that you think would be good, and then make sure that the semantics we actually define further up in the document actually allow that.
And not sure if this even makes sense. Okay, when a server has multiple observations with different measurement cadences and is defined by the EP-min and EP-max values, the server may evaluate all observations when performing the measurement of any one observation.
That's a good goal, and to get there, we would need to define the EP-min in such a way that we actually do have that leeway.
Okay, so then when we go look back to EP-min, so EP-min, that makes sense because we have may here. Oh, that's EP max, sorry. Sure, must wait.
Yeah, that's
So it's
not
this must, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And worse yet, it can't satisfy this must currently at all
Correct.
with current observations.
Right, and I don't want to make it, 'cause it's easy to go should. That makes it easy. Right? It's recommended, but you know, you don't have to. I actually, that does let us, that is the semantics that allow us to meet my implementation consideration. Because I can violate this when I decide to.
Yeah,
Then you could just as well put must, but you know you won't in there.
I must if you want to.
Yeah, so I think really what we're trying to say here is that from the point of view of the client, this would be a good thing for the server to do.
Yes. But it's the, from the view of each client, I'm giving you these recommendations, but it's up to you how they impact your measurement cadence. So they really are just recommendations from the client. So should does make sense in that context.
Well, should is always an interoperability requirement that we have specific exceptions for in mind. And we would have to spell out those exceptions in order to be able to use should. So I'd rather put in something like is encouraged to wait or something like that if we think this is a relatively weak request.
Okay, so the minute in seconds, the client recommends that the server wait between two consecutive measurements.
Yes.
I like that.
Okay, we should have some correlation to EP max as well, since there is also a must condition there. So
yeah, but this is a firm requirement. It doesn't matter what else you're doing. You have to do a measurement at the end of EP max. That's not a recommendation. That is a requirement.
Yeah, I think it's easy for the server to combine the EP maxes because it just does a minimum of them. But it becomes difficult if we have the EP mins, because then you get these weird schedules, like in my example here.
I actually like the way this reads up here now, because that's really the way I utilize it. I understand that the server says, you can, you should wait for this amount of time, or I'm fine if you wait this amount of time. So I kind of like the way that reads.
I'm still having a bit trouble coming up with or imagining how this would be used from a client point of view. So if I were to implement a client and I don't know how the server is implemented, which I generally don't, then I have nothing to put in there. I could put in a 0, or I could, so from the power considerations, I understand you would be using this for. This is more of a topic of, does it make sense to evaluate this given that my EP max will expire sooner or later? So isn't this really a thing that the server can decide on its own?
Okay, so it is, but the server doesn't know the preferences of the client. So that's the way it is right now. The server makes this decision independently. So let's take the case of, and believe me, clients are aware of the servers. I know my server is actually a power line device in Alaska doing a measurement of a pipeline. I know that because it's my device. When I'm the client, that server is my device. It's not like I'm unaware of the purpose of it, who deployed it, how much it costs, the power saving I need out of it. I know all that because it's mine. The client is only the one that's saying, I want to be able to configure some things. So in this case, I have that device out on the oil field, right? And I know it's power line. So I know I can't wake up more frequently than every 5 minutes to do a measurement. I don't need an EP min. I just use EP max to say, wake up every 5 minutes to do a measurement.
Yeah.
But if I know that I have a little bit more flexibility because I've got a huge battery attached to it, I can say, you know what, you must wake up every 5 minutes, but I'm fine if you wake up every minute. That's up to you. Because it's my device. I know the characteristics of my device. But I'm using my use cases. I'm not sure that's true in all use cases.
This sounds more to me like something that there's a configuration thing than something that's related to this observation.
I don't know, because an observation, it's very observation centric, how frequently you should be doing a measurement. Because if this is an alarm observation, I want it to be as frequently as needed for me to
put the index in there.
Right. But if it's not, if it's just a notification, of a current level, right? Then so a liquid level, I want to say, you know what, you must send it to me once every minute, or you must measure it once every minute. But if you want to measure it more frequently, maybe every other 10 seconds, it's up to you. So my recommendation is don't do it more frequently than 10 seconds. You must do it every minute. But that's your scheduler. Do what you want.
Yeah, I think it's more like advice from the client that it really doesn't need this information to be evaluated more often. So I think we maybe should phrase it that way.
I'm sorry, Karsten, we're talking about this?
Yes.
Okay, so how did you want to rephrase it?
You have it also in the chat.
Oh, yeah, I had to close my chat.
The client indicates that it has no use for this being evaluated more often.
indicates to the server that since it has no utility for more frequent measurements, and I have to fill the chat window again here. Let me see. The minimum period indicates amount of time in seconds. The client, when present, the minimum evaluation period indicates a minimum time in seconds. I'm going to try and put this at the end. The client recommends to the server for more frequent measurements since it has no interest in receiving more frequent.
But it's not about receiving. It's no interest in the server making more. Yeah.
So let's see if the sentence makes sense now.
No, there's some remnants there.
Okay, so when present, the minimum value indicates minimum time in seconds. The client recommends to the server
To wait.
to wait between two consecutive measurements of it, since it has no interest in doing more frequent measurements.
In the server doing more frequent measurements.
Yeah.
The client has no interest. The client has no interest in
And-
the server doing more frequent measurements. Yes, that works for me.
I love wordsmithing, online. Sometimes it gets tough. All right. Reading it again. When present, the minimum value period indicates minimum time in seconds. The client recommends to the server to wait between two consecutive measurements of the conditions of the resource, since the client has no interest in the server doing more frequent measurements. It's a bit long, but it does capture.
Yeah, I think we could yes, exactly. We could work with that now and then get it a little
All right.
more
Let me
concise a bit later.
I don't want to lose anything, so let me go ahead and commit these changes. Did everybody agree on the separation of the two tables? Because I did that as just a proposal. Wherever I did that. What did I do?
I think it's good.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm actually weighing up whether we should have two separate sections to describe them, but let's have them as two tables for now.
Okay, so let me just keep those as two tables. Let me go ahead and commit this. I just don't want to lose these changes. I know we're coming up to the end of the meeting. Did we want to keep going, or did you guys have other topics?
So just to add on to that section when you were editing the EP-min, EP-max, I'm coming back to the example that Carsten just posted on the chat channel about it was could you scroll a little bit more, just a little bit. Yes, if both EP-min and EP-max attributes are defined, EP-max must be greater than EP-min. So is that a greater than or greater or equals to EP-min?
If it's greater than or equal to, I saw no reason why you would ever send EP-min. So I was always thinking it would have to be greater than.
Okay.
It's an edge condition, but to me, if I said EP-min and EP-max to 7 seconds, it makes no sense. I would just not define EP-min. But it's how do we do that with P-min and P-max? Because I copied, I tried.
Yeah, I think P-min and P-max have exactly the same condition, that P-max is always greater than P-min.
I'm just trying to get to the. Where is it? Okay, minimum period, maximum period. It doesn't say anything in P-min and P-max.
Sorry, I think I was
Right,
talking
there it
about GT and LT. Sorry, so yeah.
GT and LT are special.
Yeah, they were different. Yeah, exactly. So P-min, P-max, I think we didn't actually say anything there.
Yeah, here it goes.
Oh, no, actually,
Right here. It says.
sorry, yes, we do say that. So, yeah.
I should have kept that same verbiage. So I separated it out into a separate sentence. I could combine it if you want. The maximum must be greater than 0 and greater than EP min if present. Do you want me to do that for consistency?
Let's do that for consistency. That would be good. At least if you put that, it's one section inside.
I like consistency. I tried to be very good about that.
Yeah, so that's easier when you read the language. Yeah.
I'll go back into edit mode. We're pretty close. Thanks everybody. I mean, this was a difficult topic to capture correctly. Okay, here we go. It must be greater than. Under present, I was there. And I can get rid of this. All right, I like it. I'm assuming.
Yeah, that works.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for the confirmation.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Good stuff. I think we're good. The question, I guess, is did we want to put this in different sections? Because I can just do that offline if we want to, or keep it in the same section.
Please keep it in the same section because I still have editorial changes coming in. So it's better not to, just keep it as it is. I think this is good.
Sounds good. I'm just doing a quick review to make sure no fat fingers or other bad stuff happens. I think this works for me.
So if my understanding of EP min and EP max is correct, this should let me phrase it differently. The mental exercise I'd like to do, or invite you to do as well, is if two observations on one resource are coming in through a proxy that is aware of this implementing those conditional control attributes, can the proxy come up with a set of parameters based on which it would start just a single observation and then forward the values? Appears to me that it would work, but I'd like to go through it probably offline, and maybe someone else could do.
Yeah, I think it would be good implementation considerations to talk about how a server might combine values from different observations.
So we have this statement that kind of addresses that. I think the interesting case that Christian mentioned is really an intermediary could do that as well, and then provide a combined observation or optimized set of control attributes.
Well, intermediate usually has no knowledge about the semantics that the server actually applies here.
It might have cached its self-description.
Oh, well.
Yes, the legality of that is questionable. But the intermediary can just as well be a reverse proxy set up explicitly that is configured with that knowledge.
Yeah, that's true.
So, Karsten, did we want to enhance this text, or do you think this gives us enough, I guess, allowance for the server to say, if I'm waking up for any reason, I can do whatever I want?
Yeah, I mean, this gives leeway. This doesn't give guidance. But I agree with Christian. This requires some more thinking. We are not going to do this minus
Okay.
10 seconds.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so the PR is there. I mean, I think anybody can, you know, make basically a pull request into my pull request. So I don't think you have rights on my branch, but if you wanted to make suggested changes into my pull request, we could absolutely do that. And then we could review them in the next interim meeting.
I also made a pull request fixing your tables so they look good on GitHub.
All right, so there is so going back to make tables readable and get them flavor markdown. So I should merge this.
So you don't need to do this for the internet draft, but if you are really working a lot on GitHub, it helps to make the tables readable in GitHub flavored markdown as well.
So Bill, I think you would need to merge this into.
Yeah, I think I just saw that also. So yeah, let me try and merge those.
But it's going into the master.
It's good, Carsten. I think that's a good approach to take anyway, because it's a pain looking at this from GitHub, and yeah, that would actually work very nicely. Thank you.
All right, and then when you adopt that change into the master, I'll go ahead and update. Actually, I'll just. Yeah. All right. We'll figure it out when we look at the merge conflicts. Okay. Thanks, guys. I think.
Thank you.
I can stop.
Thank you.
Sharing now.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, everybody, for your input. Appreciate it.
Alan, thanks indeed, and all for the discussion. You were saying you're also planning to file more PRs on 3 additional parameters.
I'm not sure. Do you guys, I mean, when you look at those parameters, did they make, maybe I'll put in a separate issue for each one of them so we could start a thread, because to me, I would like to. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. So I will take those three other attributes and I'll put each one in a separate issue so we can.
I think that would be useful because there are three different kinds of attributes anyway. So
exactly,
it's good to separate them as separate issues. Indeed, thank you.
Okay, I'll put those issues in. I'll try and get them in right now. Thanks.
And just a quick thing for the authors, there's still an outstanding open issue on GitHub, number 17, on proxy and caching considerations. That was the result of long discussion on side meetings, with noting that Pmax, I guess, was problematic with proxies, and the best thing to do, at least as a next step, was to add some considerations somewhere. So I suppose that's also on track for the next update, Bill.
Yeah, let me have a look at that. I think that we actually resolved it, but I'm not entirely certain yet. But there was a discussion with PMAX, right? Yeah,
I think it was about that one. Yeah.
Because we have 4 open issues, and
speaking of which, the oldest one opened by Carsten is closed, I think, because it was about authorship, and I remember you changing the author list in the version submitted in July.
Yes,
so that issue is probably closed.
Yeah, we could close that.
Or
Close that.
closed, yeah.
Do we also,
Yes,
should
okay.
I close my issue since we now have a pull request? And well, I'll leave it open. We can talk about it next time.
Yeah,
but
let's leave this open. I'll
That should be
just
closed
do the
when
pull
the pull
request.
request comes in.
And
It's merged.
please consider whether we should include my example into the draft. I don't know if we want to do that, but it has helped our conversation, so it may help the reader.
Personal opinion, it would help a lot, and at some point even with ASCII art figures.
Yeah, let's skip this example, and then we try to generate, let's say, something that's more consistent with how we are doing this in the draft also.
Sounds good.
Yep.
So by the way, we have 3 more interims to go, and if need be, we can come back to this topic if there is more to discuss based on the update that come during the next weeks. Otherwise, 109, of course. Okay, we are +5 now. Anything else you want to quickly mention for today?
Yeah.
No, but thanks for inviting.
course.
Marco.
Of course.
think
And if we can come back to this.
I think the people who I would have told this to have already left, but just pointing out the CoreConf Shepherd stuff is moving forward.
I noted. Thank you very much, Karsten. You should have got also all the API call answers now.
Yeah, so I put
Okay.
them in.
Great, thank you. Okay, then I think we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for today. Have a good day.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.